Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon as we gather together for a webinar series looking at, how to participate within the job network in 2020. In early spring, COVID made its way through the US, and so did its impact on our economy. So in order to slow the curve, many companies were faced with the decision of temporarily and in some instances permanently closing their doors. So with Credit Human's mission of helping create communities that create and maintain financial slack, we've seen lots of our community members impacted by this, either personally and or financially. And so we're bringing in today an expert in the area of career transition. Her name is Barbara Greene. And Barbara Greene's going to talk to us a little bit more about what it is that she's seeing and hearing. So as we go through our conversation today, we ask you to keep in mind any questions that you may have, because at the end of our webinar today, we're going to have 5 minutes at the end where we can ask you to write out your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen and send them over to us. So we'll answer any questions that you may have. So Barbara, can you share, Barbara, I do want to say welcome first. Barbara is the CEO and founder of Greene and Associates, a career partners international firm located here in San Antonio. So Barbara, can you share a little bit about what it is that you're seeing and hearing?
I'm happy to share. I want to thank you, Irene, and also Credit Human for hosting this platform for people who are in that quandary of saying, oh my gosh, how do I find a job in the COVID world? And all the changes that have occurred. It really says something about your organization that you care enough about your members, that you've listened to them, for one thing, about their pain points. And one of those pain points is how can we get better at finding the right job, not just any job, but the right job. So thank you again. The idea is definitely to be have a mindset that says it is possible. In spite of everything we may be reading or hearing, it is possible to find the right opportunity for yourself with a lot of different skill sets and hard work. We are seeing people who are hiring. There's no question about it. And it may be in different ways. It might be a part-time job that ends up being full-time. It could be temp work where people are needing different projects. It's really been interesting to see the types of innovation that are going on. Businesses that have closed, unfortunately, others have opened. So there are definitely different ways of looking at how to contribute really to the world. And that's what we need folks to really think about, is how can they contribute? And maybe it's not the way that they used to contribute, and so it's a different way.
Yeah, and that's very true. It's about contributing and really trying to figure out where best to contribute right now. And part of the challenge that I know a lot of people are facing when going through career transition today is figuring out how to stand out in this job market, because you can't go out and do face-to-face networking. Job fairs are limited right now. So do you have some tips and techniques that you can share with us about how someone can really stand out given the social distancing nature of our work today?
Yes, and what I want to do is have a conversation with you about those two distinct methods that are specific that people can move forward on. Yet truly, Irene, if there's only one thing that everybody gets from today's conversation, it is about the fortune is in the follow-up. What we find is that people do get discouraged in their job search, and so they stop connecting with people. And the importance of follow-up is critical. So remember the saying, the fortune is in the follow-up. If that's the only thing you take away, know that. And I'm hoping that as I talk more about these two different methods of searching that can give you a competitive edge, that anyone who's on this call, whether it's you personally looking for work or someone in your family, or it could be the entire family. And because I have experienced it also of being laid off, my entire family throughout our lifetime all of us have been laid off in some year, and as recently as the COVID. So knowing that, and then knowing that my life work. So we know that there is that hope that we can continue on. So Irene, I know that the idea of two methodologies can be a lot to absorb in this call that we have today. So the good news is Credit Human is placing all of our PowerPoint that we're going to be showing you on the website. So you'll see it there, as well as two distinct, our methods, two methods that Credit Human is gracious enough to share with you as well as the community. So let's move forward in talking about that first overview. The competitive edge is to maximize your connections and increase your visibility. Increase the visibility. It's the person who's in front of someone else, and it's not necessarily in person. How do we get to them? It's about all these different ways. And so I came up with an approach and a method that's called the P squared E squared. So let's take a look at it. It's pretty simple, yet extremely powerful. So we have two P's here. One is through people. And we're going to talk more about that power of connections with the people and how you do that virtually. The next one is through printed material. And that's really what are you taking a look at as to how to see what is there, what's not there, what can you observe. The two E's, the next one is focused on events. And I know that a lot of people here, including myself, go to a lot of events. And that is where I get a lot of my energy as this raving extrovert. And I'm missing it, quite frankly. Yet there's still lots of events going on. So I'm excited to share more with you about how to maximize and be visible at the online events, which gets us into the last E. It's electronics. And what's interesting about this is before COVID hit, Irene, I had developed this approach many years ago, and we were really just on the forefront of the whole electronics and the virtual. Now it's like pushed it to the metal, right? Fast and furious. So this approach is, let's take a look at how can you be visible with people, how can you be visible in print to others, and how can you be visible at events, particularly virtual and the electronic. Now, what's interesting about this diagram and this approach is that the people connections it's a dotted line. So imagine a dotted line to print, events, and electronics. So it's all very critical. So think about those four areas. And as an example, one of the things we talk about is write down all the different people that, like your top 10 people who know you, love you, care about you, that you know that you want to stay visible with, okay? And make sure that you remember your neighbors, your family, your friends, your church, all of those different connections. So take a time to really think about who that list is. Now print, where can your name be seen and be visible? Well, in many ways, we can see it on billboards, right? Some people will actually propose to people on the billboards. Some of us have seen that. And so the names are right out there in front. Now that print gets into electronic now, because when we're doing so many emails and when we're on a group email or a task force that we're working with or a community project, the emails come together and you can see their name. The other people on your committee can see their name. So your name is visible, you're highlighted. One of the things we want you to know also in that whole print, which gets into the electronic, is your signature line on the email. Does it have your name? Does it have your phone number? Does it have your email? Does it have your LinkedIn? And then for some people, they're actually creating websites for themselves, which also get into the electronic. Events, oh my gosh, I have to tell you a quick story. We've been hosting a virtual complimentary workshop every month since March, and we will do that again until December. And we have folks who are coming from all over the place to participate in these virtual workshops. So and that's an event. So what we do are breakout rooms to make it really look like a real workshop. And what we're discovering that people will tell us is that they're reconnecting with the people that they spoke with, because these are people from all different industries and different companies in our breakout rooms, and they're connecting with them all on the same day on LinkedIn. And then they starting up the conversation about how they're wanting to be involved in the community or getting a volunteer work experience to help them move into a different area. So maximize and leverage really all those wonderful free resources that are out there at the
That's
same
great.
time.
Yeah, that's
So let
great.
me stop and pause for a moment and see what questions you might have about the P squared and E squared methodology here.
Yeah, I currently don't have any questions. I want to remind our attendees, write down your questions. At the end of this webinar, you'll have about 5 minutes, and we'll address any questions that you may have. But I do want to say this is great because so many individuals get stuck looking for roles online, um, especially to find that next job. And there's so many other ways and methodologies of taking care of that, connecting with those top 10 people, looking around, what printed items are you seeing, going to events, particularly virtual webinars, and positioning themselves, through that. So I think that kind of brings us to this next technique that you want to introduce. Do you want to go ahead
Right,
and do that? Yeah.
right, I do. Thank you, Irene, to reinforce that idea of connecting with different people. So the next one, and people say to us, so how in the world can I find out about these jobs before they ever get online? And I want everyone to really stop and think for a moment about how you got your first job. Okay, just ask yourself, how did you land that first job? How did you land the last job that you had or the current job that you have? And who helped you? Was it through an ad online? Was it your neighbor telling you about something? Was it a place that you frequented because you paid money to them to eat at their restaurant and you got to know the restaurant owner or the wait staff very well? It was kind of like Cheers, where you come in and they know your name. So we want you to know that about 70% of the time we find work opportunities and information through other people. Now that we also want to say that it's a multiple marketing approach. So I'm breaking it down into the SRW2D formula and methodology here. And that gets into the speaking, the reading, writing, walking. There's two W's. And the D is driving. And part of this is being really observant. So with the speaking, we want you to be a host with the mostest, not necessarily a guest. Okay. So when you speak, when you go to the grocery store in your neighborhood, in your community, who do you talk with? How do they know what you're doing? You probably frequent the same grocery store on the same block over the many years and see the same faces of the cashiers and the managers. Who can you speak with to get insight, information, advice? And oh, by the way, anyone you pay money to, I want you to write them down in that major list. Anyone you pay a bill to, write them down as a potential person that you need to speak with. There's a vested interest, and I know that all of you can read between the lines on that. Speaking of reading, what are you reading? And be observant to that. What kind of ads are showing up in the paper or online? When you look at different professional associations or perhaps your volunteer activities, schools back in session, has been all year, right? So what kind of materials are coming your way that you could infer of what the possibilities are of what they might need? Let me pause for a moment, Irene, as we think about the speaking and the reading and inferring, other thoughts that come to mind for you.
I really think that being a host and not a guest is critical.
Yeah.
Even when you're reading, when you reach out to individuals, that you're reading about, you want to make sure that you're somebody that they can trust. And when you present
Yes.
yourself in a certain way, you start to build that trust. And I think that that's critical.
It truly is. And then reading is something that we grew up with, and that idea of how do we think between the lines. So when we read an article about a new business, or even a business that may be going out of business, what might their needs be? And companies and organization hire you because of the pain points. And we got a lot of different kinds of pains going on, right, Irene, now
Yes.
in our world. So what is it, the good pain that you could help them with? And there's bad pain that could help them with. So all the people, when we run out of disinfectant going to the stores, all those other companies switched gears from making wine to disinfectant, right? And look at the innovation that occurred. So the two W's as we go in is, how are you going to use your writing skills, and then walking, okay? So the writing skills, oh my gosh, they're really increasing right now. And how you show up in an email with written communication, and where are you writing? Are you writing an article or posting it on LinkedIn? That is the professional organization, the professional social media for all of us, with taking a look at job search. That's where people usually find us. So think about how you're going to write that email. Before you push the send button, reread it and do a
Yes.
spell check at the same time. It really makes a difference on how you're presented. Walking. Now, there's some people out there who have no transportation options. So what we suggest is walk your neighborhood, or walk the area that you would like to work in, okay? And open your eyes wide. Look around, look to the left, look to the right, look to the front, look to the back, and you get to see all the possibilities that perhaps we've taken for granted as we've walked by, and we didn't know that that business park was just within 2 blocks from the house, and that they have all these different businesses. And if you just walk down that alley, you see what's going on. Or to the ice house on the corner. And in that ice house, guess what? There's people to talk with. There's that friendly cashier, that friendly owner. And so you're continuing to combine that P squared E squared plus the SRW2D. Now the D is driving. We also have people who say, Barbara, I'm trying to save money on gas, keep my expenses low, and I don't want to drive clear across town, yet they really need to work. Well, fortunately for some of us, their companies are letting us work remotely. Yet, do we have the internet service that we need to have to even be able to say we can work remotely? Now, companies are helping us do that, and there's all kinds of avenues. But what we suggest is get in your vehicle, have someone else drive, you and the passenger, get your iPad out, get your phone out, get your notepad out, and start noticing all the possibilities of organizations, companies, businesses that are within your 5-mile radius, if that's how you want to look for work. Also, zip codes. Zip codes, put your zip codes in, and you can do a zip code search on different companies. So what we have shared with you in this gives you that competitive edge. It gives you 2 different methodologies. And when you put them together, Irene, it's extremely powerful.
Wow.
So let me pause again and see what thoughts are coming to your mind.
Yeah, so I want to thank you, Barbara, for sharing all of this with us. These are great tips, the P squared, E squared, and the SRW2D. Now, as a person's walking around their neighborhood, as they're driving through their neighborhood, presumably they're going to see companies that are outside of their industry, and they may see levels of work, or excuse me, roles that have a completely different level of work than they've worked in previously. And you could kind of see where an individual might be nervous to step into a new industry or take a different level of work than they previously had. Do you think that that's something to be cautious of, or do you think that these roles could be leveraged in the future?
There's an advantage right now, Irene. because we're all going through this together, right? And people are more open-minded about talking with people who have not done that work before. In fact, we just had a client actually hired by a major organization for a role that he had never done before, and they see potential in him, and he's going on to do other things. But they had some core, he had core values that matched the organization. That's one of the things to really look at when you're doing your research and you're looking around, is which companies seem to be in alignment, seem more like what you would enjoy working in. That's going to give you a competitive edge right there. And I remember when one of our major hotels came to San Antonio. It's called I'm going to give them a big plug because they do so much. And it's the Marriott. The Marriott came to San Antonio, and they put a big ad in the newspaper and said, "No need for experience. We hire people with smiles. No need experience. We will train you. What we need are people with smiles 365 days of the year." So that consistency. So have the courage to open the window broader than you even think you can.
Yeah, and I know your personal motto is really about resiliency. And I think that taking on a new role in a new industry, a new level of work shows your capacity for resilience. And that's got to be appealing to a future employer down the line when all of this kind of smooths out and you're ready to go back to your previous industry. You could really leverage, that soft spot in COVID, where
Right,
a lot of
right.
people have had to shift, and pivot, and to be able to leverage that as, showing resilience and innovation.
Yes, and one of the questions that are often being asked by employers right now is that asking people who are in between assignments. And remember, we are be your own self-employment. You're Me Inc. You're the CEO of Me Inc. So you have a company right now, and that is your full-time job. But employers are asking people the question, so what have you been doing with your time during? And when they hear someone who's motivated, they've been taking classes online, they've been volunteering by reading to a child, or giving relief to a parent who's been schooling plus working, and they're helping them, or they're help we oh my gosh, somebody told me the other day that they're going to their neighbors to help with planting gardens and looking at their flower beds to help them, because they are working full time and trying to keep teaching as well, and the yard work's kind of going aside, and they can't afford somebody to come do the yard. So all those possibilities are important. The key is what are you doing, and how are you going to answer that question with that employer now?
Yeah, these are all great advice for all of us. So I want to be true to our commitment to our attendees, and that was that we're going to dedicate the last 5 minutes of today to a Q&A session with Barbara. So I want you all to really dig into your questions. In a short while, we'll start looking at those. But while you're typing out your question in the Q&A feature below, I want to point out that, as Barbara mentioned, we will have Credit Human will have 2 documents available to you on the Credit Human website, and that will be the P squared E squared document as well as the SRW2D document. And those are great because they're going to have additional questions that we weren't able to really dig into here today that you can do on your own at home. And if you have additional questions for Barbara that we're not able to get to today, we invite you to please reach out to her. And you can reach her through her website, which is greeneandassociates.com. And if we can just go ahead and go to the next slide where we can show her her website, you'll notice it has an extra E at the end there. So Greene with an extra E, Greene, and associates.com. And I want to make sure y'all get that correct website so you have the opportunity to really connect with her. So let's go ahead and start looking at some questions. We have a question from Leticia. She says, "Thank you, Credit Human, for offering this. I was a classroom teacher for 13 years and then left the classroom to work in educational assessment. I worked in this field for 7 years, but since colleges began opting out of entrance exams and state departments of education waived end-of-year assessments, assessment work diminished. The company began to see losses, and they had to use voluntary separation, salary reduction, furloughs, and layoffs to remain afloat. I was furloughed 2 weeks ago and am struggling with what is next for me. Some educational assessment was my plan B from being a classroom teacher. I am struggling to figure out my plan C. How do I determine what industries I can transfer my skills? Great question. Barbara, what do you think? How can she determine the next industry to move into?
I'm thrilled that you asked this question. I was also a classroom teacher. And so I know that you have the entrepreneurial spirit. I also know now that you are extremely flexible because you've already changed jobs once out of the standard type of classroom, which there's no standard anymore, of being able to do that. So what I'm getting a sense of is that you are adaptable and flexible, which is going to take you a long way. What we really need to look at, though, is for you to do some good self-reflection and take some assessments, career assessments, since you know you may have done that. So let's dust those off and take another look at those. I'm also good for a free phone call since you came to Credit Human's program today. So feel free to call our office or reach out to me. But the other part of this is you want to look at your transferable skills. So your people skills, your customer service skills, any technical skills that you have, those are great. Industry-wise, there's lots of different industries. And I absolutely think about the Association of Talent Development, which used to be called ASTD. That is the training profession for companies, okay? And it's something that I became a member of from when I started making my transition also from education to the corporate world and beyond. So look at your functional and transferable skills and start really asking yourself questions. Look at your own assessment work, and there's all different resources for that. And feel free to give me a call.
Great. We don't have any other questions right now. Perhaps individuals are still typing, but I love that you're looking at the teaching industry and how to move beyond that. I too taught for several years and have moved into learning and development with Credit Human, and that's been great. So when you have the heart of helping individuals and guiding with them along their journey, there are different opportunities out there to really consider.
And Irene, I'd like to say one more suggestion. When you're looking at different industries, I encourage people to start conducting informational interviews. Go find somebody who's in an industry that intrigues you, or a job that intrigues you, and see if you can set up a phone call or a Zoom call and just interview them really about their job. Ideally, if you could do some job shadowing, that would be awesome. But that's going to give you some real experience besides what we can research on our own with our wonderful internet.
Great. All right, we don't have any other questions coming in at this time. So I do want to remind everyone, if you do have a question that you're not able to connect with Barbara here today on, please feel free to go to her website at greeneandassociates.com. Remember, the Greene has an extra E at the end, Greene and associates.com. And we will have resources available on the Credit Human website. Barbara, I want to thank you for speaking with us today, and I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us today on this webinar as well. Barbara Greene is again CEO and founder of Greene and Associates, a career partners international firm located here in San Antonio. Barbara, thank you.
And thank you, Irene, and thank you, Credit Human, for sharing this with your members as well as the community at large. And good luck to every one of you.
Yes, great, thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.